good to have you with us as we take another trip down the road. Steve Peterson's going to join us a little bit later in the program. Steve is the founder of Raven Rising. If you're in front of a computer or you've got your cell phone sitting right next to you, it's worth checking out on your search engine. I always say do the Google, but that's maybe because my niece works for Google. But check out Raven Rising. I think it's worth your time. I took a little look at it, and the testimonials that you're going to see there are quite impressive. And the opportunity to visit with Stephen about the lives that he's changing and what he's doing, it's one of those things where individuals that dedicate their lives to something like this really make a difference, but also they make you judge yourself, right? I mean, you sit there and say, am I doing anything in this world as important as what Steve Peterson is? And I think some of you are going to say no, just like this talk show host said no. Want to lay out a little bit, though, because Ray Holmberg resigned as head of legislative management. If you haven't been following this story, Ray Holmberg, one of the longest-serving legislators ever, if not the longest in the nation, state senator from Grand Forks, head of the Appropriations Committee in the North Dakota State Senate, head of legislative management, which is the most powerful of all legislative committees during the interim. Ray ran for North Dakota Public Instruction, so his background was education, and the superintendent of public instruction was a job he wanted. He didn't make it. He didn't beat Wayne Sandstead, but he put his name on that statewide ballot, which you have to respect. Now, Ray, whether you want to use the word got caught or it was found out that he was communicating by text with a known pedophile in the Grand Forks County Jail, who's under federal investigation for transporting young boys across state lines. And there was over 70 text messages, and nobody knows what those text messages were. But the truth of the matter is they're out there. And there's an investigation happening. And so as head of legislative management, the big question mark became, should we still have him as the head of the overall legislature during the interim? Now, one of the things that happened was that the Dem NPL party, the Democratic Party in North Dakota, they didn't convict him. They didn't come out and say Ray needs to go to jail, anything like that. They talked about public perception and public appearance, and they pointed out that Ray needed to resign from that position. They made a difference. It's my belief that they did, and Ray did resign as the head of legislative management. Call it pressure, call it political pressure, call it for the good of North Dakota. We're going to find out what Pat Hart is going to call it because he is chairman of the Dem NPL, and he's the one that put his name to the letter that said Ray needs to step aside. Pat, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk, Joel. Although, again, I wish we could always communicate under better circumstances. It seems we come together when these crises happen. And, quite frankly, there's a better way, I think, to manage and to push priority in North Dakota. But nonetheless, I'd be happy to talk about the series of events in the last week and potentially what we're going to see upcoming in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I don't think there's any question that your call for resignation played a role in all this. The pressure came out. The media picked it up. We talked about it. We talked about it here on one of our trips down the road. Something like that can't be done lightly. There has to be a lot of process in that to make you decide to do it. And so I want to ask you what that was. What was it that in the end said no? We as a party and myself as a state party chair have to call for this resignation.
Well, when I look at the leadership in North Dakota, and then I pause and look at, my friends and family and coworkers, on this case, there's such a significant difference of the values and, quite frankly, the words we use. All of a sudden, we're using words like trafficking, which is a word that I don't ever want to come out of my mouth. And when we talk about that at such high levels of leadership, obviously this is still an ongoing case. There's a lot to unfold again in the upcoming weeks, but being the chair of legislative management comes with its own bundle of stress, of responsibility. And, for the meantime, I think as long as he's working his way through this, he's got to have it in that position of legislative management chair. He has to have his eyes on the prize. He has to have complete focus. That's an important job. And with all that's going on, calling for his resignation of the chair position just seemed like it made sense. Again, that aligns my idea of leadership on a statewide level with the ideals that me and my friends and my community hold so dear.
So, when you take a look at all of this, people are going to say, hey, it's a conviction before knowing whether or not there was a crime. That being said, Pat, I've got to ask you this as an independent businessman. Your lifeline is this. That people have your contact in their phone. Business comes to you with this. Business responds to you with this. If you're out there doing what you do, which is build and other things, they're going to call you on this. Can you possibly imagine a situation where you would just get rid of this and change your phone number? Because that's what Ray Holmberg did after finding out about those text messages. He got rid of that phone number. He got rid of that cell phone. And so as an independent business owner, could you possibly imagine a scenario where you would do that?
I can't actually. I've had my cell phone number for 16, 18 years, since the middle of college. And, it's plastered on my trucks, on my trailers, on my business cards. It would be a huge ordeal for not only me to get another number, but quite frankly, for me just to get another phone. And what I look at my mother who's, born in the 50s, and her iPhone broke a couple months ago. It took her several months just to go into the Verizon store and to get a new phone. And to do that in the middle of this, I guess what's turning into a scandal, if you will, just seems like it's painting the wrong picture. I hate to put these words in my mouth, but for many years, we heard show us the emails. And, quite frankly, I'm asking for the text messages. We have several series of text messages which are unknown. And if he wants to really, clear his name, I think an easy thing to do would just simply be to release those transcripts and let us know what's going on. So if we know if he's talking about deck piers and a landscaping job in his backyard, or, what all of us are thinking, which, I pray to God that that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that a little bit because, you mentioned show me the emails, and you have a job where you have to separate. You have to separate the DemNPL from the GOP in North Dakota. We, and I say we as a member of the DemNPL as well, we're constantly getting moral issues thrown at us as though we're not in any way, shape, or form someone that believes in the same values that the GOP believes in, that North Dakota believes in. That's always been insulting to me. It's always been insulting to me. The way that we live our lives, sure, you stumble, you fall, you do some foolish things, all of that. But I don't ever see a scenario where I would be talking to a pedophile 70 times by text in jail under federal investigation. And so to have that thrown up in my face, to have a Luke Simons, state legislator, removed from the legislative body because of the things that he was doing that involves sexual, I don't know what you want to call it, harassment. Let's just use that word because that's an easier word. Does it get frustrating? And is it nothing but hypocrisy when we're questioned, when our morality is questioned, when we as individuals are questioned, when this is exactly being allowed, one might say, on the other side of the issue? Now, in fairness, the North Dakota House kicked Luke Simons out, and that took Republicans to do it. But a majority of the Democrats, not a majority, all of the Democrats voted to remove him from office, and all of the Republicans didn't. And so, does it ever just get frustrating to you to have them say one thing and do the other?
It absolutely does. And, even beyond, if we could just talk about Luke Simons for a minute, we have a large amount of our House and Senate caucus that are female. And, they said even after those events, the tone in the House and Senate became even more dramatic, even more aggressive. So it's one thing to remove elected official, but that doesn't mean that the problem has been fixed. And what we're seeing play out in Grand Forks is only just the beginning. I mean, there's got to be justice for the victims of this, and beyond that, there, like you are mentioning, there has to be this pivot back to the morality that I think a majority of North Dakotans live on a day-to-day basis that we're not seeing happen in our elected official. So absolutely there's hypocrisy. Everyone, it seems to me from the Republican side, always brings up abortion. And I'll tell you, I think what's potentially going to play out is even worse. And I don't want to draw lines in the sand and define each other by what we're against. I'd rather find reasons to come together. But I'll tell you again and again and again, the values that we see in the super majority aren't the values of North Dakota. And I really think we need a correction in that, and to come back and to really vote for people that get their hands dirty every day and want to see nothing but the best. There's a lot of our candidates slate, both on statewide and on the district level this cycle, are people just like me. And I'm coming to you from a job site today. I only have about 10 or 15 minutes for the interview, and I love to take it. But there's people here getting our hands dirty that actually know what it's like to create the infrastructure and to employ people here in the state. And when we see what's happening with our elected leaders on the GOP side, it's so far away from the reality I'm living. Like I started with, Joel, I don't even want to say some of these words: pedophile, trafficking. I feel dirty just talking about it. So I don't understand how the transition can come. And I'll tell you what, Mr. Holmberg served his state for a long time. I'm sure that he's brought good to the county of Grand Forks and his constituents. But obviously something has happened. And I don't know where that transition starts, but we have to make sure that it doesn't end in the House or the Senate.
What is the Dem MPL going to do from here in regards to the federal investigation? You called for a resignation. You got that resignation. Is this something that you're willing to take farther if, in fact, more information comes out?
Well, I think that last piece of your sentence is what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for more information to come out. Obviously, there's due process. Now, you look at it and you think someone's deleting their cell phone, they're deleting text messages, they're not complying, they're not assisting with, the ongoing investigation. And to me, there's an inference of guilt there. But an inference isn't guilty itself. So we're going to see what happens with this investigation. We're going to see where the facts lie, because we definitely need to rely on the facts. We don't want to assume anything. And we're just going to see where that goes. As far as taking another step, calling for his resignation from his elected position, that's something that I'm not willing to do. That's a big ask. And I think that there may be a time when that conversation happens. But like I said, we have to let these facts come out. We have to see where the ball drops. And, we're just going to watch and see what happens when it happens.
Pat, this is something, as you pointed out, you didn't want to do, but you did do. And that took courage. Questions like this were going to come. And so, on behalf of all of us that didn't want to see the legislature that I served in drug through the mud as though we can't be functional, and wanted to see something happen so that the perception was we can deal with it, you know what? I thank you for that, because calling for that resignation took courage. And if you hadn't done it, I don't know who would have. So I really appreciate you doing it. And, I'll let you get back to that home you're building back there.